Okay, so today's exploration is going to touch on something very central, maybe in the internal Chabad workings, because Chabad, as we're outreach, we're the Foreign Legion, whatever, however you know Chabad. But Chabad fundamentally is a field of study of self-refinement and finding deep and hopefully consistent connection with one's deeper soul, God, humanity. It's Chabad is a mindset, and it's expressed by going and schlepping someone on the street and saying, "Hey, do you like Shabbos candles? You want to put on film?" But that's a much later expression permutation of it. One of the things that's elemental in Chabad, with Chabad thought urges us, encourages us to attain, is what is probably in today's world might be called mindfulness. And the idea is to be present in what we're doing and value what we're doing so that we're fully invested in it. So a simple example is, I think one of the great, actually years ago, I wrote an article about my struggle with my BlackBerry when I had a BlackBerry, and it was about, being mindful about from meeting with someone, from talking to someone, of sitting here, and being invested in it, and not being distracted by my phone. My phone's always on silent because of that. And even there used to be like a little red light, and if I was sitting and talking to someone and I noticed that red light on, I noticed my brain, like 10% of it, wondering who just sent me an email. And in the middle of talking to someone about life, I didn't like that. It was like that's not where we're supposed to be. So if we're talking, the idea is that I'm present here. We're present with each other, not thinking about where we need to be later, and not even necessarily thinking about what I'm going to answer you, just soaking in what you're saying, and then thinking that through, and then expressing what I want to say. That's just an example of it. The idea of being present and valuing what we're doing, because very often I think human nature is such that we see today often as just a medium to get to some tomorrow we're hoping for. And Torah, in many ways, you can see, makes it clear that today, which is the 15th day of the Jewish month of Tammuz, and I don't know, it is 20 something or other, in July, this is a slice of life. And even if I'm going on a major trip tomorrow, today I have to prepare for it. That's part of today's work. But I shouldn't, the anxieties of tomorrow, is if I'm going to get to the plane on time, all that stuff that can come up, shouldn't allow that to disrupt today's work. And again, today's work might be preparing for tomorrow, but then there's today's work, and living for tomorrow, and is, even though we need to prepare for the future, living for tomorrow in tomorrow, and therefore not properly addressing today, it's a human issue. And the Torah really, at least through a Chabad lens, tries to have us appreciate every moment, wherever we are, to try to make the most of it, because that moment, that hour, that minute, that hour, that day is a gift of God's, and we want to use it well. And if using it well means doing preparations for a presentation I have next week, that's fine. That's using it well. But the idea is that to use it and appreciate it for what it is. The way in to this conversation, because it's the way this curriculum always works, is it picks a Torah idea, nuance in the Torah portion, and really uses that as a portal to be able to get to the larger conversation. The portal is about the fact that in this week's Torah portion, And just a little bit of context. I mentioned before, right? The Torah has 5 books. The 5th book is virtually 90-something% of it is Moses reprising what went to the Jews, what has gone on, what their 40 years together in the desert. So the 5th book it's known as Mishnah Torah, which means like a repetition of the Torah. It's because it's not a repetition. Every word is considered, it's valuable in its own, but it's Moses talking in the last 7 weeks of his life, talking to the Jews. So if you want to talk about chronology, because the Torah is not a history book, but it takes place in history. It's framed in chronology. It starts from the beginning of creation, beginning of civilization, and the generations as they go, the unfolding of the Jewish people. Pretty much the end of the line is at the end of the 4th book. That's where they get up to the cusp of going into Israel. Moses is going to die at the end of the 5th book, and they'll go into Israel in the next book, in Joshua. So now, in this point, starting from this week's Torah portion, they're already in less than a year, they're going to be going to Israel. Moses is going to be passing away pretty soon. His brother and his sister passed away last week in the Torah reading. Now he's getting them ready to go into Israel, because when God spoke to Moses at the burning bush, when the Jews were in Egypt and they were slaves, and he was out there just a shepherd, and God said, "I got a job for you. Go get the Jews out of the slavery." The message was, tell Pharaoh to let them go, take them out of Egypt, out of slavery. He says, you will come back to this mountain, which is Sinai, which is where they look at the Torah, and then you will go to the land of your ancestors, which was called Canaan at the time. That was going to be Israel. So the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, where they were going from coming out of Egypt, was to go to Israel. And they've been in the desert for 40 years, and that has always been the target. Moses knows he's going to pass away in the desert. He's not going to take them in, but he's preparing them to go into Israel. When they go into Israel, they're going to have to settle the land. So he talks to them about 12 tribes and the allotment of the land. And he says that the allotment will be by lots. They're going to draw lots. There's going to be two buckets. There'll be, it seems like, pieces of wood upon each one with one of the names of the tribes. Another bucket with pieces of wood with sections of the land. Pick out one. That's going to be theirs. Now that sounds kind of random by chance, but the Torah tells us that picking of the lot, that itself was guided by God. So what you'll see a little bit further here, what the Medrash tells us and the Talmud tells us, is that before the picking of the lots, the high priest, who wore a breastplate with all with precious stones, in which were engraved the names of all the tribes. That was something in there. That was a way of communicating. There would be letters would light up. That's how God communicated. He was also inspired then. Say that first he would say, I'm going to take out, the first one's going to be the tribe of Judah, and it's going to be this section. And then he would pick it up. So he forecasted. So they knew it wasn't just by chance, by random. But then there's something else, which the Medrash itself says there was something additional, like an additional miracle. And additional miracles also doesn't make much sense, because God doesn't make miracles. God created the world. God created the nature. Breaching nature, or transcending nature, is not our goal. Our goal is to live within nature and bring a sense of supernatural connectedness and godly connectedness into us. But we're not looking to break nature. So God, even the idea in the Talmudic the Talmudic principle is that miracles are only for a purpose. God doesn't make miracles for no purpose. Here is something that the Medrash, the rabbis of the Talmud themselves say was seemingly over the top, an unnecessary miracle. What was that unnecessary miracle? And we're going to start off with this. The language that the Torah uses, a few times it's mentioned about doing lots, and there's a Hebrew expression. The expression is, it's like we say, if I look outside and I see something, I say, "Oh, that tells me whatever." I'm gonna say, whatever. I see something in nature. I see water coming down, and rain. Something. You see a phenomenon, an inanimate phenomenon. That didn't actually tell you anything. You say, "This is what tells me." This looking at that tells me something. It's an expression. In Hebrew, from biblical times until today, there's an expression, so it's al pi, that this something, p means a mouth. This idea, this something tells me something. So the way they'll translate it is by the pronouncement of the lottery, we knew who gets which thing. Doesn't mean a pronouncement. It means an indication. The Medrash says, actually, miraculously, that piece of wood would not would bark out Judah or this section, which tricky stuff. We don't, it's not going to happen at home, but this is what we're going to focus on. This idea, why in the world would would God need that? So let's start on 194. I'm going to bring up the.
Actually, though,
yeah,
the miracle raised the question.
Go ahead.
Is it possible that he was able to discern when he reached in the feeling of individual chips?
Well, what he did is he spoke before he put his hands.
Right.
Right, and he said, "This." Oh, you mean? And then he went.
I mean, I think in terms of the fixing.
Listen, sleight of hand is always a possibility. I'm going with what the rabbi said.
More. Yeah.
Okay. So text 1a. This is from the verse. It says, "The inheritance of the land should be apportioned to the tribe, whether numerous or few, by pronouncement of the lottery." And again, pronouncement of the lottery isn't a problem. It's whatever came out, it indicates. But text 1b, oddly enough, Rashi, who is always looking for just simple understanding of the text, he goes, "What? Oh, pronouncement of the lottery?" So what does that mean? The lot spoke. That the actual lot said something. Why does Rashi need to tell us that? Why does he need? If the Medrash comes up with funky stuff to give us the history is one thing, but it doesn't. That Rashi says, I like to make his own quote is that I want to have the verses understandable to the 5-year-old. This is understandable. Say it, pronounce it in the lottery, and in the Hebrew, al pi hagoral, whatever. If a kid speaks Hebrew, it's not going to come up with a question. Not going to think, oh, it has a mouth. It doesn't have a mouth. The idea they say the lot spoke means this is something that the Torah is trying to teach us something here. Let's go to text 2. This is from the Talmud. The land was divided by lottery, as the verse states, only by lottery. In other words, that's the only way you should separate. You should divide the land. The land was divided by a prophetic spirit communicated through what's called the Urim V'Tumim, the engraved letters in the high priest's breastplate, as I mentioned before, as the verse states, by pronouncement of the lottery. How can both be true? Was it a lottery, or did it come from the high priest? Elazar, the high priest, donned his breastplate through which God communicated. Joshua and all the Jews stood before him. A lottery receptacle with the names of the tribes stood before him, and a lottery receptacle where the names of the land portion stood before him. He ascertained then we're on page 196, he ascertained by the divine spirit and proclaimed, the tribe of, for example, Zevulun will arise from the lottery, and the portion of Akko in Israel will arise with him. Zevulun was on the coast. He drew from the receptacle of the tribes, and Zevulun emerged in his hand. He drew from the receptacle of land portion, and the portion of Aqua emerged in his hand. He ascertained once more by divine spirit, and I mean, he went through obviously 12. The tribe of Naphtali will arise from the lottery. The portion of Genoser will arise with him. He drew from the receptacle of the tribes, and Naphtali emerged in his hand. He drew from the receptacle of land portions, and the portion of Genoser emerged in his hand. Okay, so that is, that is enough. If we want to make sure, and Eric said maybe this is, maybe this was fixed. If Elazar wanted to fool himself and fool the Jews, we never know. But the idea was, once he has this trick where he's saying in advance and through his breastplate what it is. The Jews knew this wasn't Hashem, and this was not just random and luck. It was something designed by God. But the question is, so why does it need to speak? What was the purpose of that funky miracle? Especially since we know in text 3 that, again, the Talmud says it also, but this is from one of the early grades. This is maybe a little bit more of a developed quote. God desires to preserve the natural order as much as possible. The order of nature is precious to him. He overrules it only in cases of critical necessity. Who created nature? God. That's our context as nature. We're not trying to get past nature. We're not fighting nature. We're trying to use our natural condition in a way that's meaningful and draws much supernatural holiness into the condition. We're not trying to strip ourselves of the natural condition. So any time there's a miracle, and the question is, why did God need to do that? And so we're happy for them, but it had to be for a purpose. What would be the purpose of these lots speaking? To ascertain that this was by divine design. We already knew that because of the high priest forecasting. So what was the purpose? And now we're going to get into the idea of being fully present. Actually, before we go into this, they're going to quote here something. As I say, this is a quote from the Rebbe from 1970. What happened is, the context was that there was a group, a large group, 1970, flying transatlantic was a much bigger deal than it is today. A group of visitors came from Israel. And before they left, the Rebbe called for a public gathering. He wanted to give them, a departure, a bon voyage address. Everyone get together. He's talking. He's sharing words of Torah. And the Rebbe was a very sharp person. He sees people looking at their watches. They got a plane to catch. So the Rebbe said then that he remembers I don't think it's in here. He remembers his father being with his father-in-law in Leningrad in the 1920s, when the communist depression was hot and heavy, and his father-in-law was a target because he was pushing back. He was working for the Jewish community to have schools and mikvahs, and the name Herson was an enemy of the state. And he had to catch a train to Moscow to meet with members of the Jewish community there. And it was a dangerous trip. And they had a car came to get him. They were going to leave in 10 minutes. He walked into his father-in-law's office, and his father-in-law was sitting calmly studying Torah. And the Rebbe said, he was all nervous. What's going on? And when he finished, he said, how do you have the presence of mind now to be able to put your mind you were studying so seemingly so focused. So the previous Rebbe told the Rebbe this idea of appreciating every moment as its own moment and fully investing yourself. And he noted a great Sephardic rabbi from the 1200s, known as Rabbi Shlomo ben Aderet. And Rabbi Shlomo was a court physician. He was a leading rabbi of the area of the city or the country. He had a lot of public responsibilities, and he always every day he went for a walk in the palace gardens where he was the physician to be able to whatever to think. He always managed to do it. And they asked him, "You are such an overburdened guy. How do you always find time?" He said, "It's if you organize with your time and you focus on your time and you utilize it to the fullest. So this is you make a space for priorities." And here he's quoting him. Text 4. The natural explanation is that when Rabbi Shlomo lectured, the rest of his calendar ceased to exist as far as he was concerned. When he was talking, he wasn't thinking about the fact that an hour later, he has an important appointment. He was into his lecture. When he was into his appointment, he was into his appointment. For the duration of his stroll, when he went for a stroll, it was as if nothing, not even his lectures existed for him. He was able to cut out space and be invested in what he was doing now. That doesn't say it here, that's called success with time. Being able to use time to its fullest and not sit half in the chair of this moment because you're worried about later or about what happened before.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going.
You're a page behind.
Oh, what? Did I not do it?
Take a look.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's it. Okay. Just heard from my mouth what you can read now with your eyes. Okay. Okay. So looking at this idea that because often we prioritize the future and we see now as a means to the end. There was a rabbi, another great rabbi of the 1500s, who was asked a question of someone in those days, especially when Jews were really, they had no self-determination. There was a Jew who was imprisoned, and the rulers, I think it was in Turkey at the time, they said, "We'll let you go one day to do one mitzvah." He was complaining, he can't live like a Jew. Choose a day, get the Judaism out of your system, then you get back into prison. So he wrote to a great rabbi, "Which day should I choose? Yom Kippur, Pesach, right? He only got one day in the calendar." So he wrote to this Rabbi David ibn Zimra. Rabbi David ibn Zimra wrote this kind of a famous response to it. He says, "I noticed that one of the sages of our day delved into the subject that was asked, but came up empty because he built his arguments on a faulty foundation. First, he suggested Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur can be seen as the top of the heap in holidays. Then he switched to Purim because Purim can be seen as top. He said, that ruling is inappropriate, do not rely on it. The ruling must rest on this foundation. We have an undisputed halachic principle that a mitzvah must never be postponed. Accordingly, the very first mitzvah opportunity that arises that cannot be performed in prison takes precedence. It doesn't matter whether it's a major or minor mitzvah. This is quite obvious. He's saying, you can get out today to do a mitzvah? Go! Why should you wait till Yom Kippur? Today's an opportunity to do something special. What's going to be Yom Kippur? I don't know. So, see what's up to God. But we don't, right now, today is a slice of valuable time. And if they're saying you can get out of prison to do a mitzvah, grab the opportunity. Don't postpone it. Okay. It's not totally on point for the general subject, but I can't resist. There's a guy who just walked by here before, there in the back, he was carrying something. He's actually fixing our bar. His name is Mark Stein. Mark Stein is the first human being we knew from this region. He actually had written a letter to my father, who was the head of Chabad in New Jersey, saying that if he has kids, he's Hebrew school or something, and if someone would come to Basking Ridge area, he would be willing to help support it. I grew up in New Jersey. I had never heard of Basking Ridge because it really wasn't on the Jewish map as far as I knew. I'll cut straight to the chase. His parents lived in Berkeley Heights, a little further down the road. Very typical Yiddish-speaking Polish Jews. I have no idea how they fell into Berkeley Heights. They belong to the Lower East Side, which is where they probably were. They were in Irvington, wherever they were before. Now they were in Berkeley Heights. And I spoke to them. We always speaking Yiddish because these are just Hamish Jews. Mother tells me we moved in here June 92. Sometime in that summer, she comes over to me and she tells me in Yiddish that when she left Poland during the war, they escaped Poland during the war. Her father took her to see their rabbi. Their rabbi, she said, was the Triska Rebbe. I'm not sure who that was. I'm sure it was a great guy. And she says, I was a little girl. And he looked into my eyes, the Triska Rebbe, and he said to me, Elke, that's her Yiddish name. She was Ellen. Elke, you need to finish off what your father started. So I said, what did your father start? I said, my father was in the middle of building a shul, and he had commissioned a Torah to be written. He said, and I wonder, how is it? I'm already old. I never did it. I I had marching orders. I should have, I have the money to do it. He could have written a Torah. I just never did it. Must be that God wanted me to delay so you could have it. Thank you very much. I had a condo, no shul. It should give me $500 for a mailing. Would have been more valuable to me at the time than a $30,000 Torah. But take it. Great. Thank you. But so we commissioned it, and I told the sofer, the scribe, take your time because I have nowhere to put it. I don't have a synagogue. I don't have a minion. I have a condo. What am I doing? We can put it downstairs in the basement. So he took his time. But the following year, maybe it took 14 months, 15 months. He told me it's finished. So I called Mark and I said, I have faith. We're going to get a piece of property. We're going to have a shul. And I want to wait with the Torah, finishing the Torah, until we can bring it to a proper shul. Not now. I'm going to tell the rabbi, the scribe, to put it to the side. We'll let you know, hopefully soon, when there's the time to finish it. He said, fine. He said he totally understands me. 10 minutes later, his mother calls me. And she also, in a very Yiddish way, she starts saying, I'm not pushing, you're the rabbi, you make the decision. She said, I'm going to tell you something they taught me when I was a child. You never postpone a good thing. You're making decisions that you're going to go with a shul, and then you could bring in the Torah. He says, Rabbi, is it a good thing to finish a Torah, a mitzvah? I said, yeah, it's a good thing. So taught you that you have to, why should you wait till you have a shul? Maybe the Torah comes first. I said, you're 100% right. No, I wasn't pushing, but she was right. I said, you're 100% right. I was making my calculation, 100% right. So I can tell you I don't know God's machinations, whatever, but we needed a 3-acre property. I didn't even have a credit card. There was there's no way for us to get 3 acres. Was going to be at least 700,000 was I think the lowest we got, because you need for zoning. I think we finished. We rented Liberty Corner Firehouse, and we made a celebration of finishing the Torah. I think it was February 17th. But from that day, a series of events went that between February 17th and April 1st, which is about 6 weeks. April 1st already, I was holding the deed to this place, to this piece of property, which means we paid. I didn't have the cash. Someone lent us the cash. Whatever. It's a long story. This was going into foreclosure for $210,000. We got this piece of property, 3.5 acres. But it was this series of events, and until she passed away, I always used to say, "I listened to you, didn't push off a good thing. If God takes care of the rest." So there's this idea of, what are you waiting for? Have a good thing, do it. But part of that is, if doing a good thing makes today special, so what are you waiting to make another minute special? Make it now.
Another question.
Sure.
How much is the weight?
Oh, it's the big blue Torah.
I know, but
It's
how much is the
yeah.
weight?
It's I don't know what the weight is. It's the one we have in there, but that's the one everyone struggles to lift.
I lifted
Yeah,
once,
yeah.
but it's very heavy.
He was Mark's father was warned by it. He said, "I want the Cadillac. He wanted the best, the heaviest."
But you mentioned to me that the father was something that he can able to lift it.
It's a beautiful Torah, but
And he can
yeah,
able to lift it, so that it's
I can barely lift it holding like this. Yeah. All right. Text 6. Let's look at this from a halachic perspective. This is a great and Talmudic genius from the more recent generation. Text 6 says about in actually what we're reading in Torah about the Jewish journeys in the desert. It says he wrote the starting points of the journeys according to God's instruction. Moses in the Torah, we'll see in the next couple of weeks as we read, doesn't just say the Jews started off in Egypt, they ended up in Israel, and they stopped 42 times, which is what it was. Or maybe, and they stopped in these 42 places, which is also nice. It says they went out of Egypt and they stopped here. Then they journeyed from here and they went to there where they rested. Then they journeyed from there and to over there and they rested. Each leg of the journey is not just as mentioned as an aside. It's given its own respect. Now, the conventional purpose of a journey is either to leave our current station or to arrive at a future destination. In this case, the journey itself was purposeful in fulfillment of a divine commandment. Similarly, the places they stopped at on their way are also in fulfillment of the divine commandment. What this rabbi is telling us is he's saying, you could say that the journey was from Egypt to Israel. That's what it was. And they stopped a few places. One's 7-Eleven, wherever they stopped. The Torah gives each leg of the journey its own significance. And so, where they were there, they camped there, then they decamped, and they went there, and they camped there. It's its own little saga. What this rabbi is telling us, that in the journey of life, where we say it's not only the destination, it's the journey, each leg of the journey is its own purpose, is its own objective. Because we're all on a journey through life. And the places we stop, it's not just starting off here and ending up at somewhere with a degree or whatever it may be. It's every leg of the journey has to be given its proper respect. Every detail of the journey, even if it appears necessary for the next step, was mapped out, instructed by God for a divine purpose. And the lesson is to us to be able to see each leg of the journey as having some divine purpose of our journey. Along those lines, oh, I didn't do this one yet. I'm sorry. Forgot to do that. Okay. So text 7. This is from the Rebbe, and it's a translation of a larger conversation, but he's giving in this a larger explanation. But this little snippet talks about the idea of total investiture. Now, who has to be totally invested? We say a warrior. A warrior has to be all there's a word for it. But everything blazing, to be totally on call, on totally aware. A conquering army is only successful if it invests all its forces and all the elements of its military. In general, we function through 3 garments: thought, speech, and action. If we don't utilize all three, we're not fully successful. If the army conquers without a well thought out plan or without verbalizing instructions to its officers and prisoners, it will not conquer fully. Same applies if it has a plan and acts upon it, but fails to communicate it properly. It might conquer, but not completely. The vanquished will continue to resist with at least some of their faculties. The idea is, when it matters, you need to be on. Attention, thinking, not distracted. The Torah, I mean, that's one of the reasons that I've used as an example. In a few weeks, we're going to have, as Moses tells the Jews about going in to take Israel, and if there's going to be a war, it says someone who just built a house and didn't have a chance to inaugurate it shouldn't be in the army. Why? Because they're still thinking about what they left behind. Someone who just got married and they didn't have at least a year in the new marriage, don't take them in, because it's hard for them to be fully invested. So it takes full investiture. We're not, thank God, none of us, our soldiers, are at war, but that model is really what the Torah uses for us, because settling the land was what it was and what it means in concrete terms, but it's also for us a guiding metaphor about us and our lives in conquering and settling our own promised land. Each of us has a destiny, and the idea is to focus on it and be engaged. And the only way to properly engage and settle our little corner of the world that God made for us is to pay attention and look at it and think about it, speak about it, even though speaking is not that you can think and act, but speaking about it means, at least with someone who can help advise, it's when we speak, it fleshes out how we feel about it, what we're thinking, and it helps us sharpen our thoughts.
Rabbi, is there a Talmudic or other source for his thought here? Or this is just...
In the text 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. And I think it's based on what the Torah reading that we're going to have in whatever, a month from now, or a little more, is the idea that there has to be, the Torah makes it clear about soldiers going into battle that they should be able to be totally committed and not worrying about back home. As a matter of fact, it says in King David's army, they all gave conditional divorces to their wives. Just this, obviously, they're hoping to go back, but the idea was to say, this is where you need to be now, and having part of your brain elsewhere is not good for the endeavor.
And I guess it would also apply to an army too, like not just ritual.
Definitely, and we're all soldiers. That's where this is coming from. You know, for you to conquer, for me and you, or us to conquer our lives, and it's not conquer is an aggressive word, but the idea is I got things to do. We all have things to do. God created us with a mission. I have to see it as a warrior, that I have to pay attention and I have to be engaged. All the pistons firing, that's what I was looking for before. It just to be woke. Okay, text 8. This is also from the Rebbe. Our capture, division, and settling of the land represents our spiritual effort to conquer the land of Canaan, the land of the 7 nations, and transform it into Israel, a holy land, a Jewish land clearly connected to Judaism, godliness, and holiness. What he's saying is, you are going to take something transformed. Just think for a second. Let's move away from text 8 for a second. I buy a house. I'm settling my family there. Is this just going to be a place where we sleep and eat? Or is this going to be our home? If it's going to be our home, it takes thought. How are we going to design this house to reflect our values? To facilitate what we want? One of the reasons we want to have Jewish books is it shouts out part of our values. It's not, the idea is, it's not, I'm not conquering my house, but I'm engaging. I'm making this mine because it's not just housing me and it happens to be that's where I'm living and I live somewhere else. I make it mine. Israel had to be a place that we made ours. This was going to be a Jewish land, a land that we were going to express our values through the land. We accomplished this by using the land to fulfill all the divine commandments that can only be fulfilled in Israel, and by building the holy temple on this land, the house about which God said, build a sanctuary for me and I will dwell in it. This is also the intention and purpose of entire creation. It is to subdue the tangible world, and as the verse states, be fruitful and multiply, fill the world and subdue it. And doesn't mean only be fruitful and multiply as in having children, which is that the simple term is create fruits of your labor. Fruits means that you've done something and it created goodness in the world and that other people can benefit from. That's called creating fruits. And turn this lowly sphere into a home for God, a place where God is fully manifest as we are in our homes. Just like when we're in our home, we're there and, we let our hair down, so to speak. God wants to be at home in this world, and that's through our actions. Now, take this that metaphor, so one step further. Text 9. This is from the previous Rabbi. He says, in 1857, one of the great Hasidim asked my honorable saintly grandfather and teacher, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, the Tzemach Tzedek, he was known by Tzemach Tzedek, that's the name of his books, whose soul resides on high. May his memory protect us. About traveling to the land of Israel. Okay, so there's a lot of platitudes there. The point is that one of the great Hasidim asked his Rebbe, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, about, he says, I want to go live in Israel. Well, study there, it's Israel, even though Israel then wasn't such an easy place. He opened his heart to the Rebbe and revealed that he yearned desperately to study and pray with diligence in the Holy Land. The Rebbe replied, we must turn this land into Israel, make here into Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. What does that mean? Living in Israel is a beautiful thing. Some people say, they don't know, it's an incumbent mitzvah on all of us to move to Israel. I'm not going to go that far, but living in Israel it's special. It's very special, clearly from the Torah. So how does this rabbi say, we're in Russia, make here Israel? Here's not Israel. Here's Russia. The idea is that Israel, as special as Israel is, even in Israel, say prayers to God that we are still distant from our land, and we ask God to return us to our land. Because until we have the Messianic era, even there, I mean, Israel, obviously it's not Basking Ridge, it's Israel, but it's the full kicking in of Israel, we wait for Mashiach. So what was he saying? He was saying Israel means actualizing destiny of the place. Taking and coming to our promised land meant you're going to settle in the land, and settle in the land means settle in the land, engage in that land, use it out properly, put yourself into it, and use it out properly so that you impact your life properly. So do that here. Yeah, I've worked for you. There's work for you to do here. And God willing, you'll be able to go to Israel or not. Right now, the real goal is to be who God wants us to be. And you going there just to live there, said it's beautiful, but you have, to this rabbi, he said, you have so much to do here. You can accomplish so much here. Where are you running? Make here Israel, even though Russia will never be Israel, but the idea was that it could be the place where he finds his destiny. And here's something else from the previous Rebbe, who this is to a rabbi who had moved because he had been forced for financial reasons. He had to move from Vilna to Herson, which is in the Vilna is in Lithuania, and Herson is in Ukraine. So what did he say? And he was complaining. He's saying that the Jews in the Herson region, they weren't as engaged, and he didn't. Back in Vilna, he had more of a Torah environment. So the previous Rebbe said to him, for what purpose did God bring you from your city in Vilna to your city in Herson? If it were just for your livelihood, God could provide you with students when you're living where you were living or nearby. Have you considered what the Torah tells us, that a person's steps are established by God for a hidden purpose? When God told our patriarch Abraham of blessed memory, go from your land, and it is written, Abraham traveled continuously southward, the cosmic rectification of the world began. By a decree of divine providence, we travel to the place where the divine sparks that we must rectify await the redemption like inmates in prison. So if you're looking for your destiny, here's where you can be useful, and God wants you to be useful. So here, before we go further, then, what the Rebbe said here, and they don't bring any of the quotes, I'm surprised by, but the Rebbe was saying, what was the deal with the lot speaking? The lottery speaking. What is a lottery? Lottery is a medium. You have Jews, they have to go to Israel, they have to figure out where to settle. We need a medium. What do we do? A lottery. The important players are the Jews and the land. The lottery it's a medium. It's an inanimate medium. God created this miracle where the lottery called out, really proclaiming its own relevance to tell the Jews. They're in Israel, in leading a meaningful life, there are no throwaways. There's no just, it's a simple medium. You're going from here to there, make something out of the journey. And the Rebbe would say this all the time. So a flight is delayed, you have an extra 2 hours in the airport. Can't stand that when it happens to me. But see if there's someone, maybe have a conversation with the person next to you. Make it meaningful time. So the lottery, again, it didn't need this miracle. If the miracle, they knew where the land, and there was the whole divine spiritual engagement from the high priest, so they knew that was designed by God. And the Medrash also, and there was an extra thing thrown in. That's how the lottery spoke, since it was a piece of wood, so to speak. It was to call the Jews' attention that settling in Israel, even if it's your personal Israel that's not in the land of Israel, means recognizing that every moment is an opportunity for meaning. Even the challenges in life are potentially isometrics for the soul. We look to see, where can I find the meaning here? And that was a message that God was sending. As the Jews were going into Israel, he didn't want them to think, oh, now we're changing residence, and now we're out of the desert, Gavaldik. But does it make a difference if it was Israel or Uganda? At least we're living somewhere. So living in Israel means actualizing your life. And in the words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, you want to make it Israel wherever you are, because Israel is a concept also. Israel means leading a life where you're connected, where you are in the moment you are, you're engaged, your pistons are firing, you're here sitting fully in the chair and engaged and making the most of it, not worrying about tomorrow, not worrying about yesterday, although you can set aside time for that too. But now what you do is you're engaging. So to continue this idea, text 10, 1 second. Oh, I didn't finish this, I'm sorry. Saintly people who have lofty vision see where their sparks await them and go there. As for ordinary people, the cause of all causes and prime mover orchestrates various reasons and circumstances to bring them to the place where the sparks they were assigned to rectify reside. And we see life that way. We meet people, say, it's not happenstance. There's always opportunities, and we want to look for opportunities to be able to find meaning in the things that seem to be just happening to us, and they're just random. We don't believe in random. Text 11. This is also from the Rebbe. What goes on in another part of the world and in another time, undertakings that have their own frameworks, their own purposes, is not our concern. Our responsibility is to devote ourselves completely, thought, speech, and action, to making this our specific location, our specific time in the land of Israel. This is the only way for us to have a global impact in every place and every time, because our assigned portion of the world includes all portions of the world. That for us, it's about the Hasidic way of looking at it. It's thought, speech, and action, to be totally in sync and engaged. The previous Rabbi used to say, said there was a time that when someone said Shalom Aleichem and asked you how you're doing, they actually wanted to know how you're doing. Now you say, "Hi, how you doing?" It's kind of a kind of a throwaway. I see you. Say, "Oh, you want to know how I'm doing?" We'll talk about my arthritis and my back. No, they're not interested. Unless someone is interested. It's to have our mind, to think about what we're saying, be engaged in what we're saying, and be engaged in what we're doing, so that we're totally synchronized human beings. That's a whisper of finding our own Mashiach, or finding our own promised land. And that's this idea, being engaged in that way. And the final text is, this is about, this is an article from Chabad.org. A young lady I know, she wrote that two students, Chabad students, go around the world and they visit far-flung areas where, at least at this point, they don't see a place to have a full-time couple. And it happens every summer, especially like right now. I don't know how many hundreds of pairs of students, or thousands, all over the world. So two students went to the Aleutian Islands, and there was, what they could find was one Jewish woman and her, and I think she had two daughters, or one daughter, I can't remember. But so they're out in the middle of nowhere, and she hadn't even told people that her kids that they were Jewish, because there would have been, it's like nobody else there. So when these students came, she said, I feel a little guilty. What can you tell my daughter that makes it about being Jewish and the meaning of being Jewish? So here was the language, more or less, of what they told her. All around the world, women and girls bring in Shabbat by lighting candles on Friday afternoon, 18 minutes before sunset. But when they are lighting 18 minutes before sunset, bringing in Shabbat in Australia, it's not yet Shabbat in Israel until 8 hours later, when the women there light the candles. 7 hours later, New York lights, bring in Shabbat, and eventually California and the entire world lights and bring in Shabbat at different times. The very last time zone is at the furthest point on Earth, which is the Aleutian Islands. Aleutian Islands is the very last place in the world every Friday to have the opportunity to light Shabbat candles. I assume that's correct, latitudinally. You and your mother have this opportunity to usher in the light of Shabbat for the entire Aleutian Islands. You will also be the very last Jewish girl in the world each Friday, little Stacy, to usher in Shabbat with your Shabbat candles, completing this unifying circle. What they're telling this girl is that she has a very special opportunity. The truth is, lighting a Shabbat candle is always a very special opportunity. But her situation, which as distant as it was, provided her with a very special place in the Jewish people's spectrum of lighting Shabbat candles. And the idea is,
I flunked geography.
I don't know if I flunked it. I definitely didn't do well in it. Oh, here's this. I should have looked it up before. People are so polite and don't tell me to move the page. Okay. Unless they're trying to and they can't hear them. So let's do the key points. Number one, every moment is critical. No moment is secondary. Even moments that prepare us for the next moment are critical until the next moment arrives. Number two, therefore, we must be fully present and fully devoted to each moment. We must invest ourselves fully in thought, speech, and action. Number three, in fact, it is only by immersing ourselves fully in the present that we can be truly prepared for the future. Number four, the same is true of places. If we live in a place where we provide a vital service to the Jewish community that no one else can or will provide, it is an indication that this is our divinely assigned role in life. Finally, number five, there might be other exciting places and roles, but they're not our places or our roles. For us, this role is primary, not secondary. It is our role, and we must devote ourselves to it fully and joyfully. And ascertaining our place in the world, where we can make the impact, that's sometimes the struggle. But I guess we'll never know for sure. But if we're looking at our day, our week, our life journey, and say, this is where I feel that I can use God's gifts to me, of who I am, and make an impact, that's our, so to speak, our promised land. I want to fully commit. Yes.
I find it interesting with the 3 points.
Yeah.
When I was studying for my fellowship with the Albert Ellis Institute,
Yeah.
his 3 points were affect, behavior, and cognition.
Okay.
You know,
Affect, behavior, and cognition. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, very similar.
Hasidic, yeah. Yeah. You never know where he got it from.
Mhm.
We can sue for royalties for intellectual property. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's human. You know, it's insight into how humans work.
Mendy says they steal our best stuff.
They definitely steal our best stuff. I say that about, I say that about Christianity, but yeah, everybody else steals it too. Okay. If there are any questions, and otherwise, wish you a good week. Next week, we're going to use a new book. To those who are just watching slides, you're not going to know the difference. But for those who want books, this is the end of this book. Okay.
Can you give us the name of the book so I can order it? The numbers?
I sent you a picture of it, Dr. Feynman. I sent
Yeah,
you, there was an email I sent you asked me about it. I sent you I attached a picture to an email.
Yeah, it's somewhere in
It's somewhere in the
the
cyberspace.
cloud.
I
In the
got it.
cloud.
I'll tell you, do you use you have a smartphone, right?
Yes,
Do you have WhatsApp on it?
absolutely.
Okay, so how about I'll give you my cell number. Send me a WhatsApp, and I'll take a picture and send you a WhatsApp. How about
Great. Okay.
908-482-7789. It's not a secret.
Sounds good. We'll get it out to you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, be well.
Be
Thank
well
you,
and have a good
Rabbi.
week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Have a
Rabbi.
great week.